And call this meeting to order. The regularly stated January 25th, 2021 Spring Hill Board of Education meeting is called to order. Candy, please collect the roll.
I'm going to call the roll call. Please state your name and your location. Mr. Boyle.
I'm here on Zoom.
Mrs. Sealing.
Here at Hilltop.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here at Hilltop.
Mr. Winbolt.
Here at Hilltop.
Mr. Updike.
Here at Hilltop.
Mrs. Mitchell. Here at Hilltop. Mr. Anderson.
Here at Hilltop.
All here.
All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here in attendance this evening. We appreciate the attendance. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for approval of the agenda. Any discussion on amendments or changes? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell. Yes. Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Approved, 7-0.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to our first agenda item is public participation. There are a few rules around this, and there is a process that we'll work through. We've prioritized the people that will be called up to speak. Number one, students that have submitted a card will go first. Then others will be called to the podium as their cards were received. In the last 10 minutes, I'll ask if there are any other new and different perspectives or information that hasn't been shared to give new ideas and thoughts and information a chance to be heard as well. If not, we'll continue with the final 10 minutes. I will announce I was asked to announce who is up and the person that is on deck, the next person in line, so that we can gain some efficiencies. Know that the time limit set for speakers is set at 3 minutes. We typically, according to our process, we allow a maximum of 30 minutes for this conversation. We've already extended that to a 60-minute time frame. According to our board procedure, the board will not hear any personal complaints concerning any employee or groups of employees of the school district or any person connected with the school district during open session. All personnel matters are referred to administration, who then reports to the board in executive session. That's the only time I'll walk through the process. So hopefully it's clearly understood. If not, know that this is a meeting in the open, not necessarily an open meeting. You have the right to be here. You have the right to participate when asked to. You do not have the right to disrupt this meeting. If disruptions occur, I will call a recess. We'll recess for 5 to 10 minutes. Let things calm down. We'll come back and go back into session. With that, the first person is Kaylee Howell, and the person second will be Logan Howell. And we've moved the podium so that you're within 6 feet of everyone. If you're comfortable, you can remove your mask. It helps us hear, but it's completely your decision.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Howell. I'm a 7th grader at Woodland Spring, and I'm here to tell you that I never thought that I would have to fight to go to school. I certainly never thought that I would have to stand before you yet again and try to convince you to let us in. All my life, I've heard that education is the key to success, that education is going to take us places. Currently, education is only taking me from my bedroom to my kitchen to my living room and then back to my bedroom again. Not exactly the places I imagined or they intended. My parents have always told me that school is my job. Well, how can I be expected to do my job if I can't go to school? How can my teachers do their jobs if they can't see me? In my Zoom calls, my teachers always say, "Turn on your cameras, guys. I want to see your face." What I really want to say when I hear them tell us this is, if you want to see my face, then put me back in school. If we were in school, none of those things would even have to be said. I want you to know that I'm a straight A student and I've always worked hard in school. But I'm going to tell you that my grades have definitely felt the effect of online schooling. As you know, we had to take a second math test recently. I'm disappointed to say that despite my best efforts, my scores declined. My first math score was a 244. My most recent score was a 237. That is a 7-point drop. To me, that is insane, considering my goal to reach was a 251. I was 14 points away from my goal. While my parents tell me that my scores are okay, to me, they just aren't. During this test, I could not focus, and it was hard to do basic math. There were many distractions that would have been completely eliminated if I were in school. I'm just going to say what is on most students' minds. Zoom calls are stupid. They will never come close to the experience of being in class. We will never be as productive. We can't learn to the best of our abilities. Lots of my fellow peers are scared to speak up. They don't want to get in trouble with the teachers. But I realize that I should not be scared to speak my truth. I should not be scared to speak up and say I am learning very little. I am not being productive. My grades are declining. My will to learn is depleting. Will I be prepared to move on to 8th grade? Am I even getting the basic education I need? Am I retaining this knowledge? The answer to those questions is no, not in the slightest. Just think about that for a minute. You have so many students begging you to put us back in school. So many of them aren't here because they have lost the will to try and they feel you have given up on us. All I'm asking you to do is let us try, let us succeed, let us in. Thank you for your time.
Logan Howell. And Emily Dowd is the next person behind Logan. Emily Dowd.
Hello, my name is Logan Howell. I'm Kaylee's brother. I just want to say a few words about why my sister should be in school. Reason 1, I'm tired of hearing my sister complain that she's not in school, and I believe it is hard to not be in school. Reason 2, I feel like she is getting dumber online. If she were in school, she would be getting smarter. She needs a lot of help from my mom to do her work. Reason 3, I just like hearing that she cannot play with me because she has homework to do that she needs help with. That should have been done in school. I have something else to say. I think it's unfair that you aren't allowing kids to be in school because of COVID. More people have survived than died from COVID-19. I don't care how many safety precautions you need to take them back in school, but I need my sister to go back to school. I can hardly believe that you allow me to go in school, but not my sister. Let them in.
Emily Dowd. Isabella Schaefer is next, after Emily Dowd.
Hello, it's me again, Emily Dowd. It's kind of sad I have to come back and give valid reasons to you all why you should let us back into school. But here we are, one semester of my senior year taken away because of your poor decision making. Honestly, I don't really care if you or anyone who's listening dislikes what I have to say. I'll be out of the district in less than 5 months. I've spoken to you all once before about the effects of mental health and how horrible online learning is. But it doesn't look like any of these concerns that not only myself or many other students and parents have is taken into consideration. My question is, when will this stop? COVID will be around for who knows how long. So when it is time for you all are going to let students start a sturdy transition back to their normal lives. We all knew cases would spike, and they did. So the students who were exposed and are tested positive were quarantined. The simple solution due to the number of cases. But to remove us from school again is ridiculous. You put those who struggled with online learning back into the same environment they were in August and September. It is draining. We had hoped of someday an okay school year, but that was ripped away. I feel bad for the peers in my class who graduated early. They got nothing out of what was supposed to be a good last semester. What are you going to do next school year? Remote learning again? If I had another year here with these conditions, I'd move schools. Lewisburg sounds nice. They've been in school all year. When are you all going to decide that it is time to stop being fearful of a recoverable virus and start looking at the bigger picture? It is really disheartening to know my words and my peers' thoughts might be ignored again. It is also heartbreaking to know that some teachers, for liking online school, the reason is simply because it is easier. This is your job, at least once you go through the hardships with your students. No one said it would be easy. It certainly isn't easy for the kids. Our sports teams and coaches are doing the best they can with the players. Why is our education system not? If you want students to thrive, put us back into school. It is not as complicated as you think. To have us stay home, log into Zoom, sit there, not pay attention, look up the answers, then receive perfect scores will only result in lazy, unmotivated, inefficient students. This just sets our futures up for failure, and you all put us in the position to do so. Not only are we learning nothing, but there is no one to talk to. How do you think kids are going to be okay with going through this every single day? Why do you think it is okay to draw it out for so long? I'm going to be honest, the only thing that made me motivated to even do my schoolwork is basketball, where I can talk and I can see my friends. Without that, my grades would be embarrassing. There are more kids struggling than you think. Those who aren't most likely don't even care and want the easy way out. Stop hiding in the shadows and do what's best for the kids. If the parents are still worried about COVID, continue with the online option you had all given the first semester. I have a couple more sentences. But to ignore our wants and needs is selfish and cruel. Are you going to listen to us, or are you going to continue to hold us back from our growth? If you want what's best for the students at Spring Hill, you would have listened to us the first time.
Stella Schaefer. Hannah McCormick is next.
Hello, my name is Isabella Schaefer. I'm a sophomore at Spring Hill High School. You might recognize me from the email I sent all of you. I'm speaking to ask you to remove the gating criteria and share with you the cold truth of online schooling. I created a survey asking a series of questions about students' mental health and how their performance online looks. If you have not looked through those yet, I ask you to do so, along with a video. I didn't come up here to speak on my behalf, but to share with you the voice of my peers. As a part of my survey, I asked students to share their thoughts anonymously. Here are some of those quotes. If sports can congregate unsafely like they do now, I believe that the music and arts industry classes should be able to come in after school or for a class and work safely. I truly don't think I have learned anything this semester, and I have never been so unmotivated or had missing assignments. After this year, I feel that my spirit is permanently damaged. I get up every day not being able to look forward to having a good one. Every day just feels the same. The school and media has done nothing but put fear in our minds and constantly reject our voices and mental or emotional state of mind. Olathe, which is a 6A school, has way more students than we do and have figured out how to make in-person work. I can't go to sleep at a regular time. Those 4 years of our lives are something that we will never get to relive again. I just want a normal school year, or at least something close to it. I can't do this anymore. Those are only 10 out of 230 responses, all of those being taken out of a paragraph, sometimes multiple. You think these are kids, they don't know the dangers of COVID, but we're the ones having to wake up every day and try to learn something off of a computer screen. We've been forced to inform ourselves, and let me tell you, I've seen some kids who are more educated on this topic than some adults. Someone said mental health was a problem before online, but no one cared as much then, so why now? I think that is completely true, but it is never too late to start caring. A healthy mind comes with better performance and happiness. Online school is only destroying students. Having to get up every day, stare at a computer screen for hours, only a 30-minute lunch break, is damaging us. There's been days where I've been doing schoolwork for a whole hour of every class, yet I finish everything later in the day. We are done looking at something we can't understand and not being able to figure it out. We are tired of the constant wondering of when we will be able to live a normal school year. We are exhausted from the fight back and forth of when we will be going back. I know the pandemic plays an important part, but mental health should be one too. When we were at school, we wore our masks. We walked in the same direction. We sanitized twice every hour, which all should be enough. If I am able to play a sport with much less effort and taking precautions, I should be able to learn in a learning environment. It's a proven fact that it's significantly better for someone to have separation between learning and relaxing. I can't do that when my bed is only a couple feet from a desk. I'm not asking you to take away the option of being online. I have one more sentence. I'm not commanding you to put us in school. I'm simply asking you to take into consideration the mind of the students and at least give us a chance at a better year. A chance should have been the bar on the floor. Thank you for your time.
Anna McCormick. And Mackenzie Copeland is next.
My name is Mackenzie Copeland, and I am a 7th grader at Woodland Springs Middle School. We all know that school is important and we need an education. We are not getting what we need with online school. Grades are slipping due to 1, not being in class long enough or being taught enough, 2, being really sleep deprived from staring at a computer screen all day and doing nothing, 3, not having enough motivation to get up and do work, and 4, internet issues. Kids also need to socialize. Without that, they can become depressed, stressed, and lonely. This is not a good situation for any of us. I have many friends at local schools that are in person. Why are they back, but we're not? Also, the grading criteria is flawed. The different criteria and data do not tell the whole story, so we sit at home while our peers get ahead. The grading criteria needs to be gotten rid of, and I think kids should be in school because online school is not working. Trust me. If we can go to the grocery store, if we can attend sporting events, if we can get our Starbucks each day, then we can be in school. Thank you for your time.
Anna McCormick. Hannah McCormick. And then next is it Isla? Isla Melius.
Good evening. My name is Hannah McCormick. I would first like to thank the board tonight. You all have volunteered your time, and I know that some of you have spent stressful, sleepless nights pondering what is right for our school district. I am a junior at Spring Hill High School. I have been class president for the past 3 years. I play soccer and basketball, and I'm also part of the volunteer class. I have 4 years of my life to spend in high school. Those 4 years set the stage for what I and my fellow students will accomplish in our lives. And on that note, the stage that is supposed to be being set is crumbling beneath my feet. I'm a straight A student. I'm taking AP classes and college classes right now. I'm active in school. I lend a helping hand. I am what teachers say, a model student. And yet, I'm struggling. I wake up every morning, a mere 5 minutes before school starts, and throw a sweatshirt on over my pajamas. Why only a sweatshirt? Because that's all I need. That's as much effort that I need to put into getting ready. And I use that same minimal effort to get through the rest of the day. I log on to my classes, sit in my chair, and stare at my screen for 7 long hours. And as I look across the screen, I see that my friends' cameras are all turned off. I can't see any of their faces. I stare into the faces of no one. But I do know that behind that screen, most of them are asleep in their bed. This is what remote learning amounts to. And I want to point out that this is not my teacher's fault. Every single one of them have stepped up and put in the work to make the best out of the bad situation that they've been handed. Yet, it is not enough, and it never will be. I find myself frustrated and agitated while completing assignments. I can't focus during my tests. It's hard to find time to get any help. And as I'm sitting there in my room, frustrated and helpless, I ask myself, why can't I go back to school? It worked before, didn't it? Didn't I have a glorious month where I received a proper education? And that is why I'm here tonight. I'm asking the board to eliminate the gating criteria and send us back to full-time in-person learning. Me, my siblings, and my friends will be remembered as the COVID generation. How do you want Spring Hill's history to be remembered? What do you want the headlines to read? There are many possibilities, but I see two the most clearly. One reads, Spring Hill School District sends students back to school. The percentage of students on antidepressants decreases. Attendance rates at records at an all-time high. But the other reads, Spring Hill School District fails to send kids back to school. Suicide rates are at an all-time high. MAP testing scores plummet along with students' grades and mental health. Which headline will you make happen? As you make your decision tonight, remember that you are the elected representatives of our community. I expect you to lead. Thank you and God bless you.
Isla Melius. And then next is Thomas O'Leary.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Isla Melius, and I am in 6th grade at Woodland Spring Middle School. I'm going to speak a few short words. We aren't getting enough class hours or covering all topics needed to pass requirements. In-person learning gives us more time with our teachers and peers, which we desperately need. Please, don't make decisions about us without us. Us students need to be back in school. Let us in. Once again, thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thomas O'Leary. Andrew Allen is next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tommy O'Leary. I'm a senior at Spring Hill High School. I've been active in many sports and extracurricular activities. I do not believe we should be in online classes. I've maintained a 3.9 GPA all throughout high school. However, last semester I've had more missing assignments than I have the rest of my high school career. As a senior, I've been taking many hands-on classes like ceramics, shop class, and material science. It is hard to do the lessons that these classes teach that are also essential. And it's an even a bigger slap in the face when all the tools and the resources that our tax dollars paid for are sitting in the school useless. I can definitely tell a difference between the classes I took in person and the classes I took online. I can practically recite you some lectures from when I was in school. If you ask me what I learned today in class, I'm not sure I could give you a straight answer. The biggest issue we have is the laziness. I'm responsible for it too. You wake up at 8:04, turn on your camera, don't get dressed, and don't get out of bed all day. School is supposed to make individuals that are ready for the workforce or college. I feel like we are being done a disservice. We are being taught that laziness is okay, when it is not. If I wanted to do nothing all day or goof around, I would have graduated last year or at semester. Elementary schools are back in person, and other people have jobs that they're working. Just because of COVID doesn't mean that life should stop, and school shouldn't either. There's a 99.98% survival rate and about 1,000 in our student body. If I woke up tomorrow morning and everybody said I was going bald, but I looked in the mirror and I still had a full head of hair, I wouldn't be concerned. 1.02%. Not a concern. Thank you very much.
Andrew Allen. Andrew Allen. Jackson Bruce.
Good evening. My name is Jackson Bruce. I'm a 12-year-old, and I attend Spring Hill Middle School. I wanted to speak tonight because I wanted you to hear from me, because your decisions affect my future. I'm here to ask you to allow us back in school. Remote learning is not the same as in-person learning, and it's had a huge impact on my life. It is very frustrating and overwhelming. My internet does not work a lot of the time, and that makes me very frustrated. Many times I cannot get on the Zoom, so I miss class and I feel left behind. When I get into my computer each morning and see all the emails, Google Classwork, and Google Docs for that day, it is a lot at all once to process. Part of me just wants to shut the computer and quit. I miss being in class with my teachers, and I miss getting to see my friends and getting to work together. When I'm at home doing remote learning, I feel alone. There are many distractions, and it's hard to stay motivated. I am not getting as good as grades as I do when I attend school full time. Last semester, even though we spent more time in online learning, I learned more during the short time we were able to go to school in person than I did the rest of the semester. I don't understand why my friends on my basketball team and my baseball team that go to other schools districts around us are getting to be in school and we are not. I used to say I don't like school and I want every day to be a free day, but this has changed my mind forever. I actually want to go to school now. I want to be engaged in learning and I want to excel in school. Today I got to go to my school and take school pictures, and it made me miss being there so much. I would give anything to go back to school full time. I can't take online learning anymore. So please, let us back in school so we can have middle school in our memories. Thank you.
Andrew Allen. Andrew Allen. Peyton Vogelbacher.
Good evening, Board. I'm Peyton Vogelbacher from Spring Hill High School. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak again about why online learning does not work for me. I feel like all I'm doing during the day is memorizing facts for a quiz, but retaining little to no information. Every day I wake up and do the same thing over and over again. I forget everything I learn as soon as I leave my meetings. Being at home brings so many distractions and internet issues that interfere with my ability to gain a proper education. I feel extremely unmotivated, stressed, and even discouraged at times. Sitting in front of my computer all day attempting to absorb the information is draining not only mentally but physically. I hope to eliminate the gating criteria and reconsider for the sake of our education. Don't make decisions about us without us. Thank you.
Olivia Fraley. Olivia Fraley. And then Riley Frank is next.
Hi, my name is Olivia Fraley, and this is my first year at Woodland Spring. I'm in 7th grade, and when we went to in-person, I had the best time in school despite the masks. I learned way better with a teacher there to help me face-to-face. Please let me and the rest of middle school and high school go back to in-person. Thank you very much.
Riley Frank. And then Jillian Ligner is next.
Hi, good evening. My name is Riley Frank. I'm a freshman at Spring Hill High School. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but I feel like the lack of motivation for me and all my peers has been extremely low, and trying to pay attention during all of our classes is very challenging. Both of my parents work in the medical field, and both of them support us going back in person, even though every day they put their lives in danger. I'm pretty much home alone all day, and sometimes it gets lonely and hard to pay attention and focus, and it's definitely affected me and all my peers' mental health. Thank you.
Jillian Langley. And then Andrew Allen would be next if they've arrived.
My name is Jillian Ligner, and I am a 6th grader at Spring Hill Middle School. I believe that we should go back to school for our mental health and well-being. It's absolutely horrible that we can't be social, interact with each other, or even learn. Online is not working for me or my fellow peers. There are countless internet issues, boys playing Fortnite, many on their phones. Now let's get into map testing. I cannot believe that people would think as if we could get our tests done with multiple distractions. For example, phone, Xbox, TV, pets, siblings, etc. One of the things I struggle with most is the lack of social interaction. I feel lonely and extremely bored sitting by myself at home all day. A very wise man once said, "The most important thing in life is to show up. Show up for work, school, and family." We showed up tonight. Now we need you all to show up and allow us to go back to school. I ask you guys to let us go back in person and let us learn.
Andrew Allen. Okay. So that concludes the student card, since Andrew Allen is not here. One last call out. Okay, all right. So moving on to patrons, again, these will be done in the order that they were received. First patron is Roy Riffle, and the next patron in line is Shay Link.
Good evening, Board of Education and Administration. I come to you tonight with frustration. Last Friday, a board member made a post on Facebook in regard to a core request I made. This post claims to have the sole purpose of informing people of the request due to the many people who have shared their personal stories. This post was poorly written. For some who read it, having no idea how the core process works, were led to believe that I would be obtaining emails that many have shared that would not like others to read. Let me be clear. Those such stories, personal information, anything related to children, those things shared in confidence are redacted. The things you would not want someone to see are protected. This post did not
We're at recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. What is the deal?
We have to leave for the court, please. It's about the kids. Our children deserve better. themselves.
Groups of employees or groups of employees or persons connected with the school district.
And that would be none of them.
Pardon me?
And none of these people would be connected or employees with the district.
Okay, then you can proceed.
Comments were made of conspiracy, inaccurate information, and false accusation. There was comments of hate, threats, and intimidation. People to share the name of one of my children and the daycare in which she attends. The very information that some people were afraid I would get, they post to the entire social media world. This is completely unnecessary and completely unethical. In the 15 years I've lived in this town and been involved in our local government, never have I seen such horrible results. Let me be clear. I am not accusing or stating anyone's intentions. I am only stating the facts. Please note, I did not name anybody. I am not naming anybody. To spare them the consequences some actions can make. I will continue to challenge any board member who makes statements that are inaccurate and can impact our community, the board's decision, or the education and health of my family. I will continue to support a group of like-minded individuals and challenge any attempt to silence someone regardless of their opinion. I will not be intimidated. Thank you.
Shay Link. Debbie Dominic is next. Yeah, Shay Link, and then Debbie Dominic.
I'm here tonight representing over 75 parents and teachers. From the beginning, we have always wanted our children and students in school, but only when it's safe. I'm not here tonight to state facts and figures, data points, or lack of data. I'm here to speak to you about trust and commitment. As parents and teachers, we are tired. We are tired of asking the board to abide by their pillars of trust, to have their collective character and commitment to do what is right. We are tired of asking each of you to individually do your own research instead of relying upon someone as your source of truth. We are a group that is disappointed that it is easier to give in to the loudest voices in this debate than to commit to the gating criteria that this board created. We are a group that is not sure if we'll ever be able to trust future policies from this board. You are on the precipice of throwing out your self-created gating criteria, indicating that you cannot keep the commitments you made to us just last month. Social media has fueled much of the disagreements over the gating criteria and has been used to publicly vilify members of this community so that one side can be right and win. When used for the good of the community, social media can be a powerful tool bringing people together. In this debate, social media is being used to divide us, to see which point of view gets the most likes. Adults can no longer have a conversation expressing differing opinions without getting attacked for their point of view. Adults are setting examples for their children that it is easier to hide behind a keyboard or a mask and attack someone verbally when they would never allow this to happen in person. The parent and teacher roundtables were an effort by the board to have face-to-face discussions with us, but they weren't discussions, rather just an extension of social media. If these roundtables had been discussions where one person could have asked the other to explain more about their position, maybe we would be in a better place right now. It is clear to us that no matter what we say here tonight, the decision of the board has been made. This decision will discount everything the teachers have been expressing to the board for months. This decision will fracture the trust the parents had for you in December after you decided to commit to your gating criteria. Trust is defined as a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strengths of someone or something. If the board votes to remove the gating criteria, how can anyone trust the board to do anything they say in the future? Trust is earned, not given. The trust that Jason Winbolt spoke of regaining in December is in epic disrepair, and the bridge is burning. Thank you.
Debbie Dominic. And Dwayne Hood is next.
Thank you, board members, for your time today to listen to the community about this very difficult decision that you were tasked with. I implore each of you to listen. Please, give us your time. Some of you may have already made up your minds. I ask that you please consider each speaker tonight and what they have to say before your vote. Approximately 7 a.m. on the morning of September 9th, 2020, I was awakened to the voice of my husband, "Debbie, you need to get up. Our son tried to kill himself." I flung the covers back and jumped out of bed, racing down the hall to his room. There he laid, almost lifeless on his bed. I sat down beside him and started stroking his hair. I honestly don't remember what I said to him. I just remember trying to keep it together. As the medics arrived, I left so they could attend to him. And that's when I lost it. I still lose it when I think about that morning, when I take his picture and think about how blessed I am to be able to see him on the other side of the lens. When I hear about other students, like Eleanor Schweibacher of Columbia, Missouri, and Damon Quigley of Corning, Kansas, children who successfully ended their lives in isolation due to COVID, due to schools not being in person, due to our critical spotters not being able to notice the signs because they are not seeing kids in person every day. These spotters are our teachers, whether they want to be or not. I have the utmost respect for each and every one of them and their ability to save our children from abusive situations, health concerns, but mostly from taking their lives. We must get our kids back in school to be with the teachers. We must not let any more children die or continue to be abused to lack of being seen. Please, I beg of you, on behalf of the other mothers who cannot take a picture of their child, please remove the gating criteria. Get our teachers and our kids back together in person.
Dwayne Hood. And Megan Young is next.
Good evening, board. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak to you tonight. Before I start, I first want to... I had this beautiful speech I wrote all day about choices. I was going to come here and plead to you, to ask you guys to make the tough choice, to let us choose for our children. As I walk in this room and I look around, it is packed. And I know that no matter what we say here matters, because you've already made your decision. If you cared about the health of our children, you would have never allowed all this many people in this room. What is worse in this room than in any classroom? Please answer me that. Take 1 second and look around this room. There is more people in this room than would be in any classroom, in our high school, in our middle schools, and our elementary schools. We have children breaking down to you, in front of you, begging to be in school. When is enough enough? When is it going to take a parent to be up here that is not telling you about a chance they almost lost their child, but actually telling you about a memory of their child because their child couldn't take it anymore? I don't want to be that parent, and I don't want any parent in this room to be that parent. So we're asking you, please, please, we beg of you, think of their mental health.
Megan Young. And Jill Ackerman is next.
All right, so I had an entire speech all prepared, but I'm going to spare you all a long spiel and just kind of talk from my heart. We're fed up. This is a room full of people. See all that purple? We're done. We need our kids back in school. We need you to care about their mental health. We need you to care that 80% of these families want their kids in school. The majority of teachers want to be in school. A lot of them can't be here because they're too afraid to even speak up, because they're afraid of the unions. They're afraid they're going to get repercussions for it. My own daughter didn't want to come because she's worried about her grades. She said, the teachers will be mad at me. What kind of environment are we creating right now? We're asking you to act on behalf of us. You are elected officials. You're not listening to your parents. Listen to us. And I just want to say, too, about these kids out here, I want to give you guys an applaud for speaking up and practicing your First Amendment. We also have medical workers in our community. I used to be an RT before staying home. I used to work night shifts. Imagine being that parent who has to come home from work and spend 4 hours of their sleep helping their children. Do you know what happens when they have to go to work? They're tired. They're taking care of your family and your friends, and they're fatigued. The schools are not doing their job right now. Remote is not working. These kids are telling you that. These parents are telling you that. What is going to happen 2, 5 years from now when these kids knock on your door if you make the wrong decision? What's going to happen? Are they ready? Are they going to be ready for college? They're telling you they're not. Listen to them. They are pleading for you guys to act on behalf of them. Education is about kids, not a minority of teachers. I'm sorry. I love teachers, but education is about them. Please, let's make it about them. Do your job, please.
Jill Ackerman, and then Lori Hill is next.
Jill Ackerman. I'm a family physician, KU Med grad, Mayo Clinic trained, mom of 4, and I've obtained an emergency substitute license. I am here tonight to present the latest data and science regarding COVID-19 and school closures. January 6, 2021, a letter published in the New England Journal of Medicine summarized data from 2 million children and teachers in Sweden, showing that while schools were open, the occupational risk to teachers was no different than non-teachers. January 11th, 2021, a study from Duke University and UNC following nearly 100,000 students and staff was published in Pediatrics Journal. The conclusion, quote, our data support the concept that schools can stay open safely in communities with widespread community transmission, end quote. January 21st, 2021, a medical University of South Carolina infectious disease pediatrician found that only 1% of their 38,000 in-person students and staff tested positive for COVID-19 between September through December. Quote, it is so compelling that the schools are safe if you put all the mitigation strategies in place, end quote. Dr. Fauci admitted schools are not a major driver of community spread. Dr. Joe LeMaster, our own public health officer for Johnson County, has said of COVID-19 infection rate, we don't believe this is predominantly being generated by the number of cases coming out of the schools. The schools are doing a good job to protect their students and their staff. The CDC director, quote, there is extensive data that we have gathered over the last 2 to 3 months that can confirm that K through 12 schools can operate with face-to-face learning, and they can do it safely and they can do it responsibly. January 5th, 2021, the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, quote, children absolutely need to return to in-school learning for their healthy development and well-being, end quote. Studies have shown that the lockdowns have negatively impacted diet, sleep, physical activity, and obesity rates among children, and that there has been a dramatic increase in mental illness, substance abuse, and deaths of despair in our youth. Academic failure has also been well documented, including a measured decline in ACT results here in Kansas. The Journal of American Medical Association reported that an estimated 5.53 million years of life lost may be associated with school closure. Quote, future decisions regarding school closures should consider the association between educational disruption and decreased expected lifespan and give greater weight to the potential outcomes of school closure on children's health, end quote. Published January 13th, direct from the CDC, quote, 62% of U.S. K-12 school districts offered either full or partial in-person learning. Despite this level of in-person learning, reports to CDC of outbreaks within K-12 schools have been limited. COVID-19 incidence among general population in counties where K-12 schools offer in-person education was similar to counties that offered only virtual ed. Several U.S. school districts with routine surveillance of in-school cases report lower incidence among students than in surrounding communities, and a recent study found no increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations rates associated with in-person learning. These are the experts. This is the science. Let them in.
Lori Hill. Lori Hill. And next is Aaron Davis.
Good evening. My name is Lori Hill. I'm the parent of a sixth grader in the district. I'm here tonight to ask you, or maybe even to beg you, for your support of eliminating the gating criteria to allow our children to get back to full-time, in-person school for those who have chosen it. As a taxpayer-funded entity, your responsibility and your mission is to engage students to learn, create, adapt, and succeed in an ever-changing world. Does that sound familiar? It's from your strategic plan. What better time to be guided by your vision and your mission than now? This pandemic has indeed created an ever-changing world, one that we must adapt to moving forward. The last 10 months have been hard for us all. It's been hard for us as parents, many of whom, such as myself and my family, juggle careers that have been turned upside down and supporting our children in remote school. It's been hard for teachers, but I submit to you that it's been the hardest for our kids who've been isolated, stuck in their homes, staring at a computer screen all day, losing hope like you've heard tonight. You must let go of your fears. You must be brave. And you must have the courage to do the right thing. Isn't that what we would want our kids to do in the face of adversity? You must get back to the essential service that you provide to our children and our community safely. A few years down the road, we will know the impact that your decisions tonight have made on our generation who will soon be young adults. So I ask you, what do you want your legacy as a board member to be? Do you want to wake up every day with the burden that you failed the kids who you are responsible for serving? Or do you want to know in your heart that you served those kids the best that you could during their greatest time of need? Thank you.
One second, please. Aaron, okay. We are at a point where we have about 12 or 13 minutes left. I did say at the very beginning of this that when there were 10 minutes left, I would ask if there were any new or differing perspectives or information that hadn't been presented yet. And so after Aaron completes, I'll ask that question. If there is, then we'll allow them to speak. And if not, we'll continue down the path. So thank you, Aaron. Next up is Laura Vogelbacher.
Okay, well, we've established my name is Erin Davis, and I'm quite certain here that everyone understands the significant role of public education in our community. Teachers are extremely talented individuals. Since March, my eyes have truly been opened to the many roles of an educator. The proposal of eliminating the gating criteria raises issues and creates a substantial divide between parents and teachers within our community. It's important to recognize that there is a common ground to be had here. In our hearts, everyone knows that the kids belong in school. The notion that the gating criteria guarantees anyone's safety is naive and unrealistic. In addition, to say that we would establish a gating criteria and never reevaluate it would be ignorant. That would be similar to a teacher creating a lesson plan and never revisiting it as new information became available. That just doesn't make sense. The gating criteria is not perfect, and it never will be, because information, and dare I say, data continues to change rapidly. So the question is, how can we return our kids back to school while keeping teachers' safety in check? Well, we look at what's working in our very own elementary schools and on-site districts, neighboring on-site districts, not only in Kansas, but then we also have districts in other states. We look to other industries with specific focus on the medical industry. What protective measures have they enlisted to keep their employees safe as possible? Temperature checks, masks, social distancing, and hand sanitizing. It works for others, it should work for us. As we wait to get these kids back in the classroom, they fall further and further behind. My son's GPA and test scores continue to drop, and his post-high school opportunities become limited as a result. Eliminating the gating criteria solves several issues. It gets our kids back in the classroom and eliminates the needs for the teachers to work endlessly on lessons plans and multiple teaching methods. It eliminates consistency concerns. It resumes quality education and rigorous curriculum, and it improves the overall health of our students. Once again, my children's future lies in your hands, and I just ask that you handle his request with care. You see, I am teaching Thomas to stand up for what he believes in respectfully, and that while it's acceptable to recognize fear, he must evaluate risk and make educated decisions in life based on fact. We cannot teach these kids that fear-based decisions are acceptable. While I want the teachers to be safe, I want my kid to be safe too. I do not believe it's safe for him to be at home and away from the classroom any longer. We have known from the beginning of the virus outbreak that the risk of our school-age children has been minute. But yet we have asked these kids to sacrifice and put their lives on hold for the safety of others, and they have obliged. It's time to eliminate the gating criteria effective no later than February 1st to support and sacrifice for our kids. Thank you.
Any other new information or alternate perspectives on this? Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay, Gary.
Ms. Vogelbacher graciously offered to give me her time slot. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you this evening. Over the past few months, I've contemplated speaking with you many times, but to be quite frank, I've been concerned about sharing my thoughts because they may have negative consequences. However, I've decided I have the right, or rather the obligation, to share my convictions just as much as others, and I shouldn't let concern over how I may be perceived or treated by others keep me from sharing my views. I wish I had a larger group of teachers here to stand with me. Unfortunately, many of them share my views, but declined to accompany me tonight for the very same reasons that I have been afraid to speak in the past. What a shame that any employee should feel their voices are stifled for fear of retribution. I do thank Autumn Beshore for being with me tonight. I have 5 other teachers that said they would have been here, but they had other obligations. And like I said, I did have others that said, I share your view, but I'm just not comfortable accompanying you. So I'm a teacher at Spring Hill High School. I would like to advocate for dropping the grading criteria and getting our kids back in school full time. Here's why. Students first. This right here is a copy of agenda of our special education meeting that we had last Thursday. The highlighted on the bottom says, students are the priority. And that's what I believe our whole district agrees with. I've had 3 children attend and graduate from Spring Hill schools. I'm in my 9th year as a district employee. Over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase from administration, each time we make a decision, we need to ask ourselves this question, is it what's best for our kids? And I could not agree more with that. It's obvious that remote learning is working best for the majority of our kids. Some are doing great, more power to them, but the majority of our kids are struggling with this. I had more students fail a class during the first semester of this school year than I have in the last 4 years that I've taught combined. I'm seeing missing assignments increase.
Students miss class because of poor internet connectivity. Therefore, they miss valuable instructional time and cannot apply what is being taught in class to their assignments. Teachers at the high school receive a weekly list of students who are failing. 1 week after we went back into remote learning after Thanksgiving, the email stated, "We are going in the wrong direction, folks." That is not the way it should be. We have parents of seniors who are concerned that their child may not graduate. Students who are normally A and B students are failing, and many are simply just losing hope. That is not what a world-class education looks like. Our elementary schools have been in person all year long, as have several other schools in our area, including Paola, Lewisburg, St. James, St. Thomas, Aquinas, other parochial schools. The gap between our students and those that have been receiving in-person instruction continues to widen the longer that we remain in remote learning. We must recognize that that is a fact. Our students will be competing against those kids as they go on in life. All parents, students, and teachers deserve to have a choice. I understand that you can never make everyone happy. However, I do believe that as a board, you have the power to make decisions that can provide everyone with an option they feel is best for them. Those who choose to have their students in remote, let them stay. Those who want their children full-time in the building should have that opportunity as well. If you choose not to vote in the way I would hope you would, I can promise you this. I won't cry and scream and throw a fit or threaten to quit. I will continue to do my job as I have been hired to do and hope there's not too many casualties at the end. Thank you.
Guys, we are past our 1 hour. 8:12. Okay.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Senator Rob Olson, Kansas Senate. I hear from you guys every year when it's budget time, so I figured it'd be a good time maybe represent my constituents on this side. You know, we've got we've got school districts like Lewisburg that have been open all year. Well, we've got your school district where the middle school's not open. I'm not sure if the high school's not. I had a high schooler last year that graduated. She missed out on her prom, on her graduation, and the events. It devastated her future. I've got one in middle school that has been struggling with the virtual. He's an AB student. He's back in the classroom, and now he's back on course. His grades come right back up. But I hope you guys understand the mental health. And I know you've heard it tonight. These are some of the best speeches I've ever heard that are true. But I lost a friend to mental health. The signs are there. There's going to be more people that will die from mental health issues in this district than from COVID-19. I don't know your district exactly. I represent just a little bit, but I used to represent Spring Hill. I know Wayne and me worked together for many years. Every time you needed something, you always told me I was your go-to guy. And when you asked, I tried to get it. If it was money put in for virtual, we're leaving these kids behind. Their mental health is struggling. I just don't know how in the world we can live with ourselves to know our kids are struggling so bad and not allow them to get back to learning, get back on track. What are we afraid of? Lewisburg went all year. I'm sure they had some outbreaks. They dealt with them. We need to get every kid back in the classroom. We need to get them learning. I don't understand it. The people that are paying the price are our kids. And we'll see the price they paid in the next 3 or 4 years because they've been going virtual. Maybe not all of them, maybe some of them are doing well, but I guarantee you there's going to be a large segment of our population that are going to struggle for the next 3 or 4 years because they're behind. I'll tell you, next time you guys come to Topeka and ask me for something, this is going to be a big deal to me. And I'm not going to forget it.
Thank you, Board, for hearing me. My name is Adam Thomas. I have the absolute honor of representing this district in the House of Representatives in the state of Kansas and the people in this room. And I just want to say to the lady that spoke earlier, your story broke my heart. And I want you to know that if you never, ever need anything, you call me. I will make myself available. We can have coffee, whatever it takes, but you call me. And I am so sorry that you went through that. I, too, am worried about the mental health of these children. All the things my senator mentioned, and it's an honor to be standing here with him, are also the same issues I share. I don't want to be redundant. I won't repeat the talking points, but I will point out 2 things. Number one, these students, these 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are getting ready to graduate, some of them, they'll be voters before the next election cycle. And I implore every one of them to get out there and vote. And the first election they might get to vote on may be school board. And so I hope, for the sake of these children, they can look to you, that you took leadership, you took action, and you made the tough decision because you knew it was right. Now, I have in my pocket the list of every politician in the history of elected officials in this county who has made a tough decision that was right, that had 100% approval rating from their constituents. 0. You all know what's right. I ask you, put the kids first. I thank you for your time. I thank you for what you do. I respect every one of you. I respect all these teachers. I respect the ones that aren't here tonight because they're afraid that the people they pay their dues to are telling them to keep quiet. If they won't want to go back to school, let them go virtual. If there are teachers that wish to not be back in the classroom, don't punish them. Offer them out of their contract, no penalty, no prejudice. I have 5 children at home, and I got to tell you, the virtual thing, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've been a teacher basically at home part-time. I know you all need substitutes. I will offer you my time. I will help you any way I can. I promise you. If you need anything, you call me, and I'll be there for you. Because the kids come first. And I will do everything I can to make sure they have a bright future. They can go to job interviews and feel confident because they've had social interaction. They can be future leaders in our country. Maybe one night they'll be able to stand here and say, I served this country and this town in government as a representative, as a senator. It's not always easy, but it's necessary. Do what's right, y'all. Thank you.
That does conclude the hour that we'd allowed. I think we actually went over on time. All of the cards that were submitted will be held, and you can certainly come and speak at our next stated board meeting. They will be held, and we'll start out at the same place that we ended this evening. Thank you again for coming in and voicing your opinion. Moving on in our agenda is to the consent agenda, which includes approval of the consent agenda, approval of the minutes, clerk's report, treasurer's report, payroll and claims, and personnel. Any questions or additions or discussion on the consent agenda?
I see that our Director of Communications has resigned, and I really hate to see that. She was excellent. I remember her giving up one of her Saturdays to come stay with us all day for a board retreat, right. And she just did a very good job.
Done a fantastic job.
Hate to see her go.
Yeah.
She's been a great addition. I'm also kind of sad to see Mrs. Allison going. She was I had I think 2 students that had her per class, so, it's hard to see, and so is Mrs. Larson. She's a valued member of the community. So, Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as stated. Any further final discussion or comment? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbold,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Approved, 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to action items, 6.01 is the gating criteria. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, I'm going to have Mr. Wilson give you an update on where we're at with the criteria.
I think everybody's seen the gating criteria. I think we were at 44 last time. So I really have no new information, but if there's anything I can do, answer any questions, I'll be happy to do that.
We knew the board, this was an action item, and we knew that you would be talking about the action item, so we didn't plan to spend much time. So we'll leave it to you. Answer any questions that you have of us.
This topic is open for discussion.
I would just like to say some kind of general things about the gating criteria. I think as a district and as a board, we were about the first district in Johnson County to vote to open school. We delayed it 1 week, and we gave teachers a little chance to come in, and then the Johnson County Health Department came out with their gating criteria. And when the health department talks ordinarily, you listen. And this is something that our Miami County neighbors did not have. They did not have their health department come out with the gating criteria. And so if you'll remember, we moved to accept that basically with the understanding that the health department usually says what you do and you do it. And later in that week, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment came out with their gating criteria, which we didn't know they were even developing anything. Maybe we should have. And then it was a few weeks later that we decided to do our own gating criteria in order to try to have more of a chance to get our kids in school, because it's obvious that the Johnson County gating criteria, none of the school districts were starting to follow it because it was so restrictive that it just seemed very restrictive. So with that, Mr. Wilson took the CDC recommendations and developed this gating criteria, and it did allow us to get our kids in school. So I don't think we ever said that this was going to be set in stone. We said when we passed it, we were going to continually review it. What I kind of feel like at this point, reviewing it every 2 weeks is causing all of this uproar. And so I don't want to do this every 2 weeks. I have kids in school too, and I feel a little attacked when our senator and our representative come and talk when they don't even have kids in our school district. I know both of them and I respect them. And I've respected every teacher and every parent that's contacted me, and I would hope that everyone would do the same with us. I think almost every email we get says people wouldn't want to be in our shoes. And as far as elections go, I don't think any of us are too determined to, run for this office again so that we're sure we get elected. So I just hope you guys know, and I hope all of you know, that I'm committed to doing the right thing for the kids, and I always have been, but that has not always been a real cut and dry answer. So that's just my 2 cents for right now. So.
Thanks, Sharon. I agree with that as well. When this started back in July, August, I think for myself, it was not, I didn't want to create, or I did not want to go through this because of fear. This is not at all because of fear. It was all because we were being told by epidemiologists, health officials, the experts, to have something in place so that if community spread got out of control, we could mitigate what happened to our students and our teachers and our staff. That's where I have been the entire time. We had to have something in place for that reason. And just in case something spiked, just like in November, December, our cases got kind of out of control. I also said at the very beginning that if this gating criteria actually hindered the education of our students, we had to revisit it. I think that through the emails that I've received, through our students coming up and talking this evening, it is something that is affecting the education of our students. It is time to revisit the gating criteria, in my opinion. I still would love to have the gating criteria with some changes. I don't think our percentages, I know these are CDC percentages, but they don't match the percentages that are given by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. They go from 0 to 5, which we do 3 and 5, but then it goes 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 and above. If we were to make those changes, we would be in person right now, with still the safety of gating criteria in case we had a spike. We have a new strain. We actually have 2 new strains that have, one come from Europe and one come from Brazil. So I'm of the opinion that I would still like to have a gating criteria, but if the motion is that we have it or don't, then I still am not sure what I want to do. It is a tough choice. This is a tough decision for all of us because it affects so many people. The 7 of us, our decision affects thousands of people. And it's just not easy. And I feel like, and this is going to be really hard to say, I feel like some of the emails that I've received, that I'm being bullied into a decision. And that is not our community. We fight against bullying, and yet we receive emails saying that if you don't do this, something will happen. That's bullying to me. And I can't accept that from this community. It's absolutely horrible. We need to reflect on our own decisions, our own rhetoric, bring this community together, not tear it apart. Facebook, doesn't matter whose page it is tearing us apart. We have to come together to support our teachers, our parents, and most of all, our students. It is up to us as adults to make sure that we do this for our students. It is unacceptable, the rhetoric and behavior that I see from people on social media. And with that, I'll give the floor.
I would just say when I voted to support the gating process, I recall making the statement that if this online thing was not working, we're going to have to do something different. And what I'm hearing now is it's not working, and we haven't really done, yeah, we're trying, but just the whole process is it just doesn't work, and we're not doing much to do anything different. We've had 6 months to work on it, so I'm having a hard time seeing with it.
I think
I agree we need to support our students.
I think we've gotten a lot better at the online learning, but it's just I don't know that we'll ever get there. We're way better than we were when we started. I don't think there's probably a teacher in the district that wouldn't prefer to have the kids in class. I can't imagine there isn't. I know that's what they want. It's just how to make it work. I want to thank everybody that sent me an email regarding the online or staying home or in person. I read all of them until 8 o'clock this morning. Whatever came in today, I honestly did not have time. I especially appreciated those that had the best interests of the kids and the staff. I mean, they were positive, just uplifting, and we'll get through this. We got to get it right. On the other hand, I got a lot of emails that had personal attacks and personal agendas. Those are not in the best interest of our students. They're not good for our community. I don't know how we got to this. I don't understand, but it's got to stop tonight. We can't keep doing this. We need to remember we're all in this together, and the only way we're going to get through it is together. I thought back when I first got on the board, I think we had a tough decision over something, which now doesn't look like anything difficult at all, looking backward. I think I called Bill Meek. I took his spot. I said, what do you do when you can't decide? He goes, you do what's best for the kids. And I've stuck with that since. It's right. I have full confidence in our staff, in our administration, and our students that we can bring our secondary back into the buildings. We've been doing it with our K through 5 since August, and they are over 50% of our population, and it's working. I think if we'd use a little common sense and just good judgment, I mean, there's other districts in the state. If they have an outbreak, they close a school for a while, a week, however long it takes. That doesn't mean we don't have school. We still do online school. Not everybody that's out is out because they're sick. It's probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure a lot of them are quarantined. I think we have a really good option there, and if we just use a little common sense, we can make it work.
Well, guys, I think we have to at least consider why we have a gating criteria. And yeah, some things have changed, and we have talked about revisiting. But if you look at our gating criteria, if you look at that document, and you look at the CDC's recommended criteria, they mirror each other. They're very, very similar, and the CDC has not changed that. Yes, some things have changed. There are some other things that have changed for the negative. As Jason mentioned, there are 2 new strains that are predicted to be much more contagious. But the gating criteria is here. It's a seatbelt. It's here as a safety mechanism. And I have to, before I go much further, I got to get this off my chest right now because it's clogging my brain. Because Mr. Olson, Mr. Thomas, I don't appreciate the coercive, arm-twisting, political crap that you just put up there. Frankly, the community members that spoke tonight, they gave compelling reasons, compelling experiences. But to tell me the next time we come to Topeka, you're going to think about our decision here, we don't deserve that. We don't need that. And frankly, that was less than productive, in my opinion. I can't believe that you came here to do that, as if we didn't have enough going on here tonight. Unfortunately, I know there are some people who didn't speak tonight who did send me some emails, and I know they've emailed the rest of the board. There's no right answer here. I mean, so many people are giving us compelling reasons why a pandemic sucks. And I agree with you. Nothing about this is good. But at the same time, there are so many studies that show, you can look at these studies and say, well, the kids are not spreading it in schools. but they're not testing that. The kids aren't all being tested. And the way many of these studies are done is reactive, where the parent is testing positive and then the student gets a test. Well, if they test positive, well, they assume they caught it from the parent because the parent was symptomatic, the student was not. There's too many unknowns for us to just say, well, we're just going to throw out what the CDC said and just wing it. And if we start having a bunch of cases and a bunch of teachers get sick, then we'll shut down schools again. Well, that's irresponsible. I can't do that. And when it helps your argument, you can point to Olathe or you can point to Lewisburg. When it doesn't help your argument, you don't want to talk about Olathe. Olathe's too big. Well, whatever. I mean, we're Spring Hill. So what we have to do is make a decision for Spring Hill. And we have to consider the safety of our staff. And I know we have heard a lot of compelling things about mental health. We've also seen just less than a week ago, the epidemiologist at the Johnson County Health Department saying that suicide rates are plummeting. Suicide attempts and
So we're at recess for 5 minutes. We're not going to have a disruptive meeting. Session. Mr. Boyle, I think you were in the middle of a few comments.
Yeah, look, it's an emotional subject. The Johnson County Department of Health and Environment epidemiologist, Elizabeth Holshoe, just presented the statistics from 2019 to 2020. And suicide rates in under 18, I believe it was, are down 33%. Attempts are down something like 27%. Suicide rates have been rising every year, year after year after year. I'm not downplaying suicide or mental health issues of students in any way. I'm simply telling you what the director of epidemiology or whatever at the Johnson County Health Department just presented. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to insult anybody. It's just the facts. And the whole point I'm trying to make here is we have to have some method of determining when it is safe or unsafe for us to put adults into these classrooms. I keep hearing from people saying, oh, you got sackers that are working grocery stores and they're considered essential. Well, teachers are essential. Well, sure. They're not sacking groceries though. It's a different environment. It's a different atmosphere. Teaching is not the same as many of these other things that people use for examples. And I recognize there are a lot of teachers that say, I want to go back in the classroom no matter what. There are a lot of other teachers who don't, who are very concerned what they see. So again, there's not a right answer, but there needs to be some methodology as opposed to just saying, well, we don't like that the gating criteria says we can't have kids in the classroom, so let's just throw it out. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't make sense to do it that way. You can show me a study that says wearing a seatbelt killed a guy. Well, it doesn't mean you pull all the seatbelts out of the district vehicles. So I understand we need to maybe look at things. I recognize that. I'm willing to talk about that. Maybe hybrid is a solution. Olathe is doing some hybrid. If we just drop the criteria and put full classrooms of kids in there, there's so many of these measures that we can't implement. We can't implement 6 feet of space if we put all those kids in a classroom. Things are different at the secondary level in passing and in cohorting. There are so many reasons why secondary is different than elementary. But to just throw out the gating criteria is just irresponsible. I'll let you guys have the floor.
I have a question for Dr. Burke. If there was no gating criteria, obviously we've had contagions in the community before. What is the process for monitoring whether schools stay open or there's students in the building?
I think, first of all, you have to make sure that you have enough staff. So one of the things that we have done the last time that all the students were in is we looked at how many adults were out for whatever reasons, whether it was pregnancy, whether it was quarantine or other health issues. And then our HR department does a good job of spreading out the substitutes across the district. So sometimes you may have a building that has a lot more needs than another building. And so we were able to move substitutes, maybe we pulled substitutes to the high school and moved it to another school with more need. A couple of things that we can look at is if we decide to come back and get rid of the gating criteria, obviously we're going to have to make sure we have enough adults, staff, to have the schools in session. There's a couple of different things. If overall district-wide we just don't have enough, then we may have to shut down for a day or two. The other thing we may have to do is look at maybe a specific building. So if we have to, maybe we shut down a building for a day or two, and then that way we don't have to shut down the whole district. So I would say that's one of the things we look at. The second thing you're going to look at is number of kids in the building. So it's just like any other disease. If we have massive amounts of absences due to quarantine or sickness, there's no magic number, but the health department will start looking at you really strongly when you hit about that 20% absentee mark. And then at some point, they may tell us that we need to close. So those are the two things that we're going to have to look at.
So that covers a couple of things that I had on my list as well. First, I know that like the buzzword is data. Data, everybody's sick of hearing the word data. I don't know that we need any more data than a family physician standing up here citing the CDC, citing all of the latest research, citing all of the latest data, which she's seeing with her own eyes. That's all the data. With Dr. Jill Ackerman, thank you very much, if she's still here, for speaking up and talking about the data. So I don't even want to go there with the data again. But I do want to talk, we've talked a lot about mental health tonight. And quite frankly, I don't care what the Johnson County Health or Mental Health Department numbers say right now, because I know what we see with our own eyes. I know what we see in the district. I know, and so when we're I don't want those statistics to go up. I don't want to see these numbers rise and then we can say, oh, look, the numbers went up, thank God. But I will quote what the Pathway to Hope director said. She's from the Suicide Prevention Center, that she's done more assessments in the last month than she did in the whole last year. So what she said to me that really struck me was, unfortunately, we can't ask those that have succeeded why. But we can ask those that we're evaluating why. And what they're saying is isolation, remote learning in the students. So no, Eric, the data isn't up for suicide, thank God. But I don't need to see that. I don't need to see the data. My number is on the district website. I take these calls, and I'm happy to walk through it with lots of you. I don't need the data. Inconsistency in this is what is also, I would agree, the back and forth. I mean, I know I wake up on Wednesday mornings and wonder what we're going to find, wonder what my children. And I don't ever mean that for the people that don't have children. I don't mean that like it's a negative. It just is what it is, right? But I know what my kids are going through every Wednesday. They wake up and they want to know. All of the whole district, we're on this roller coaster constantly reevaluating, like Sharon said. So the inconsistency is almost as damaging as isolation. I do want to say thank you to Dr. Burke and Mr. Wilson and the principals and whoever else you gathered to talk about what it looks like. That's the leadership we need, and what we got in that document of what it could look like when we go back to school. So I think that was very important, and I appreciate the time and the effort. And I'm assuming there was some teacher feedback in that too, and so that is what we need. We need to work together to find the solutions to get the kids back in the building, because we all agree that that's where the best learning is happening. So I want to say to our seniors, and there's seniors here, I really do hear you, and I know that you want a senior year, and we all want that for you. But I think that some of I wanted to just recognize Bella too, and that video was powerful. Thank you. Tell her I said thank you. And just for the lyrics in that song, I've been going through the motions, learning how to pretend. So yeah, they're learning something. We know that, how to pretend, and they make everyone think they're afloat. But I do want to address the gating criteria. It was necessary, in my opinion, at the time, to come up with something. This is a new virus. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know what to do. We needed some parameters. But a lot of people will say that if we don't have a gating criteria, we're pulling the safety net. That's not true. Dr. Burke just said that too, by saying what Elizabeth Holshoe and the epidemiologists at the Johnson County Health Department are our safety net. If they see our cases too high, the health department can close us down. The Kansas Health Department can close us down. The Johnson County Commissioners can close us down. The health department advises the commissioners. So it's not like we're just pulling out the rug. There is a safety net there, and if they shut us down, they are the ones that have the authority. And quite honestly, at this point, I think that's who needs the authority, not the 7 of us. A couple final things is to follow up on what Jason said with bullying emails. I've never experienced anything like that in my life from both sides. The threats are ridiculous. The threats of I will quit or the threats of this will happen. It is hard. And it is especially hard with teenagers of my own, reading the stuff online about me, reading the things about my family. It is really difficult and not something I would never have anticipated when running for the board. I mean, someone just sent me something that said, run for the board, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Well, but I still believe that God put me in this position this year. I'm in healthcare. I do have a unique perspective, and I'm very thankful to sit here and very thankful to represent all the people. With that, I believe that Carrie Smith is exactly right. There are more teachers than not that are afraid to speak up, and we're hearing about them in our emails. There were about 20 teachers that came in December, and a teacher pointed out to me that that was 3% of our district. We have 550 staff. So I want you to know that 97% weren't here. And that's what they pointed out to me, and I think that's a very valuable point. So this is not teachers against parents, against students, it's not. Even if the loud ones are trying to make us feel that way, it's not. We love our teachers. We need our teachers. I think maybe one of the best things I heard all night was the kids begging to go back to school. I mean, have we ever heard kids begging to go to school? I mean, maybe that's the silver lining in this, so that's really great too. I do want to say that it is my opinion that ORL does not change those that had enrolled in ORL. I believe in parent choice. If they had already enrolled, I think they need that choice. With that, Mr. President, I'd like to motion to abolish the gating criteria for the rest of the year and move forward with in-person school.
Second. Second.
Yeah, I want to talk before that.
And my heart.
Moved and seconded to abolish the gating criteria for the remainder of the year. Further discussion, Dr. Burke?
Yeah, one of the things that we did do, and Phil, if you will bring that up, we anticipated that the board might have a discussion tonight about eliminating or getting rid of the gating criteria. The last time that we did a change to the gating criteria, it was really late at night, and some things didn't get done, and then we were scrambling the next day, and then it caused a lot of stress. And so what we wanted to be is a little preemptive. And when I say preemptive, that doesn't mean that we are telling you what to do. What that means was we wanted to talk to our secondary administrators, so we met with our 3 secondary administrators. We asked to meet with some teachers and also our NEA president. And we sat down and talked to them about if the board decides to finish the 2021 school year in-person learning and no gating criteria, we would like to have some recommendations. The first recommendation is optional remote learning remains the same, currently in place, and we leave it alone. Those parents chose that. They chose it at semester, and we do not think any more students should be transferred to or out of ORL. And we talked about parent choice. I've heard a lot of people say that. I've seen a lot of emails about it. Those parents made that choice, and I feel like we need to support that choice. We would like to keep the Spring Hill reopening plan, have that remain in effect with minimal changes. Some of the current things that we want to do is we want to have the mitigation practices remain in effect: masking, cleaning, social distancing, temperature checks, hand hygiene, contact tracing. What we did in this meeting is we talked to teachers and said, and administrators, what can we do that will help lower the stress? If we just come in and take away the gating criteria, then we don't want it to be a free-for-all. What can we do? One of the things that said, and there's a lot of students, and I'm going to ask you to listen because you can make this happen. One of the things that they said is that the students should adhere to the mitigation practices. And what that means is a teacher shouldn't have to tell a student multiple times to put your mask on. They shouldn't have to tell a student multiple times to social distance. If the students are here saying, I really want to be in, that shouldn't be a problem. You can relieve some stress off of your teachers. You can relieve stress off some of your classmates. It's an easy thing to do. So we would ask that students would continue to have a strict adherence to the mitigation practices. Non-compliance could mean that would be insubordinate behavior, and then there's discipline with that. Again, you don't want to say a threat, but at the same time, you're publicly saying you want to be here. If you want to be here, you need to follow the rules, and you need to help us follow the rules with your classmates. And that takes stress off our teachers. Secondary students may be asked to clean their learning spaces. Most of you parents have learned that your kids can help while they're at home. We think that they can help, if it's safely, they can help clean at school. Again, this reduces some stress off the teachers. Additional cleaning supplies or protective equipment will be provided if teachers request that. We do have high standards of air quality, including 4+ air exchanges per hour. So we're already doing that. We would continue doing that. I think we're only required to do 2. We're moving that to 4. The Kansas CASA protocols would remain in place. We can't go against CASA because we still need to follow our eligibility. This will be the one that's a little tougher, but if a student is not there, whether it's illness or quarantine, they'll provide learning content on the Google Classroom by the end of the day. So that means the teachers are not going to have students live and trying to deal with the classroom full of kids and dealing with kids online at the same time. And this may be tough, and I'm sure I'll get some emails about this tomorrow, but we made it very clear that the board may change the gating criteria or eliminate it. And we told people over and over, when we get ready to sign up for ORL back in the coming up for the spring, if you're unsure, then you should choose ORL. There's no need to add a bunch of stress onto our staff because of a decision where you had an opportunity to make that. For class periods with direct instruction, I want to go ahead and read this. I know that you can read, but teachers will provide video lessons to secondary students who are absent due to COVID, equivalent to the content and lessons provided in the class. Now, there may be some days that this is not something that they're going to do a video. It kind of depends on what's going on in the class. And we give the teachers that opportunity or that option, that autonomy to make that decision. Videos would be posted by the end of the second day following the absence. So we put an example in here. So if a student is absent on Tuesday, the video will be provided by 4 o'clock on Thursday under normal circumstances. It gives our teachers and staff time to get that video and get it out. So if your child's sick on Tuesday, if they're back on Wednesday, that's not a problem. But if they're gone for a few days, it may be a time before that video gets back to where you can see that. Teachers who have students absent due to COVID will provide at least 20 minutes per day of office hours. That may be before the school, it may be after school, it may be during their plan time. But we do ask the students to understand that those office hours need to be communicated, so please contact your teacher and let them know, because that teacher during their plan time may be meeting with in-person students at the same time. So we're trying to work with people that are not going to be here, whether they're quarantined or in COVID, or they're out and their parents choose not to bring them back. Those parents that choose not to bring them back may decide to go homeschool, they may talk to inside, or they may stay with us. But if they stay with us, they need to understand the teachers are not going to be providing direct instruction. And last but not least, and this is what Mrs. Sealing was talked about, based on staffing or student absence factor, the superintendent may direct a short-term closing no more than 1 week. Some of you know me very well. I don't like to close school. And if you remember, there's lots of times that students begged me for snow days, and we didn't do that. So I can tell you that much to the chagrin of some of my administrators, my plan is not to close school until we absolutely have to. As parents, I'm just telling you publicly, there may be times that your school gets closed when the rest of the district is open. Again, it'll come down to staffing. That will be the last resort, but that is something that we are going to have to do. Again, just as Mrs. Sealing said, the county can come in and decide to close this based on our attendance anyway. So basically, this recommendation assumes all students who are not currently in ORL move to in-person learning as feasible to maximize student learning engagement in classroom. The intention of this recommendation is to maintain safe in-person learning for the remainder of the semester unless required to cease in-person learning by the local or state health department, government requirement, board determination, or the superintendent directed. So again, we're not trying to tell the board what to do, but if you decide to get rid of the gating criteria, we need these things in place. I think that we can do a lot by doing this. I think we can go relieve a lot of teacher stress, and then we can be more successful in our endeavor to have the kids back in school. So with that, I'll answer any questions. And it should be understood, we had people in a group that make the decision. This wasn't a Wayne Burke show. I know that Mr. Wilson was there, Mrs. Hackney was there, all three of our principals, we had multiple teachers there, and we asked their opinion. And through that group effort, we had some compromise and we came up with something that we felt could do the safest thing possible if we get rid of the gating criteria.
Dr. Burke, I had a question that kind of goes along with this a little bit. Have we talked to our nurses at all about some kind of immune system support, like vitamin D or anything? I mean, I was just reading a study of the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism study, found that 82% of COVID cases are the patients are vitamin D deficient. Have we talked about doing anything like that, or something to build up our teachers' immune systems and our students?
I don't know that we had a formal conversation about this pertaining to COVID, but we can certainly sit down and visit with them starting tomorrow.
Are you suggesting education of our students and parents about the benefits of vitamin D? I wouldn't think you'd want to actually hand out vitamin D.
Passing it out, but I mean, I can understand the hesitancy in that, but at least the education piece of it would, it's a readily available vitamin that's in the grocery store, so.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I as some of you know, I actually had the coronavirus not too long ago, and I think that I take vitamin D every day, 5,000 IU every day, and I think that it helped me with symptoms. I was only down a couple of days. It really does help. So I would support education of at least the health benefits of certain daily vitamins.
Additional comments or questions?
Just looking at our calendar, we have 4 days off immediately in February, and then we go back for 3 weeks, 3.5, almost 4, and then spring break. So we do have some breaks coming up in the schedule that we could help see where things are going.
Sure.
And my other question was, I can't remember, are parent-teacher conferences in person, or is that something we need to move virtual?
We did it virtual in the fall, and our plans to do it virtually in the spring.
Good, okay.
Mrs. Sealing, one thing that I need to know is, on your announcement, what date were you wanting to have the kids come back?
So just going by what you had said before, by our current gating criteria, you were thinking that Wednesday, if we changed on Wednesday, we'd be good to go back on Monday. So I would recommend next Monday be the first day of in school.
February 1st.
I do have a question about that date, because one of the emails that I know we got from a teacher asked that if we did go back, that we did it on February 2nd. And I don't know whether that was in your opinion, Dr. Burke?
There was something about ORL is ending. I was a little confused about that too.
It's about the odd even days. So what would take place is this Friday is an odd day. So Monday would be an even day, and he's just trying to get odd even together so they wouldn't be off, and then start everybody on Tuesday for full day.
I don't know how important that is,
I'm not
but I just
sure
wanted to throw it out there because it
how-
was a request that came in an email.
It is a request.
But our ORL, I mean, I'm not being argumentative, I didn't talk to this teacher, but our ORL students are not coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought it was something about, it wasn't about ORL, then it was about block scheduling.
Block.
Okay. I would
Remote,
defer to you.
The students are on remote right now?
Yeah. I would defer to you and Mr. Wilson. I mean, if Monday sounds like a good starting point to me, but if there's some reason that we're unaware of.
We should have administrators online right now. Could I have one of my secondary principals let me know what their thoughts are on this?
And so I understand.
Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Hey, this is Mark Williams at the high school, from the high school. I think with the February 1st, we can make it work. If anything, we can run like a 7-period schedule on Friday, so all the classes have a chance to meet. It's just since we're doing block schedule, we would end up with an odd day on Fridays. That means the even classes numbers would be like a day behind, but we can make some adjustments if we need to.
Then I would recommend that your
Thank you.
recommendation be the first.
So my recommendation would be the first, which is Monday, correct? So thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Boyle, did you start to?
Yeah, well, it was stated earlier that the Department of Health could shut us down. And I just want to remind the board that Elizabeth Holshe was here when we devised this gating criteria, and she very clearly stated they don't feel like that's their place. And it would be more likely that we would shut down due to lack of staff than them actually shutting us down. So we're just...
And I understand that, Eric, but it's been my feeling since day one on this that it actually is their place. They are the health department. They are they can shut down a restaurant just as easily as they can shut down a school. So it is their place. I've never wanted to get involved in health decisions because I want the experts to make those decisions.
And I hear you, Jason. I totally agree with you. It is their place, and this never should have been put on a school board. Never.
That's exactly right.
I totally agree with you. But I don't think they'll do it.
No, well, that's their choice, and that, we can make our preference known, that it is their decision if they see the numbers are too high at a school or in the whole district.
I'm assuming we're gonna be paying attention to our teachers and our students, and if we'll shut ourselves down.
I can tell you Mrs. Hackney watches that very closely every day. She can probably tell you what our percentage of fill rate is today.
I did have a question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but have we had an increase in sub applications and? Sure. Okay, but so we have increased our sub pool some. Oh. Okay.
Great news.
Yeah. So I would just like to say thank you to the community then for stepping up. I mean, that is a big deal. So she said, if you couldn't hear the people on Zoom, she's had 3 times the amount in sub orientation. So that's phenomenal. Thank you. Oh, 3 times more sub orientation. Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's phenomenal.
Good news.
I think one of the other things that has changed since, right before Thanksgiving, when I still don't really feel like we changed the gating criteria. We delayed the start of the remote, and there were some staffing issues, but we have that shorter quarantine option now. So I do think that will come into play a little bit on students and staff to get people back in and still being cautious.
This motion is a very significant departure from what we've been doing. Very significant. And when I think about the time and energy that Mr. Wilson, Dr. Burke, the board put into creating that gating criteria, I think just a wholesale abandonment is impatient. I know that our new cases per 100,000 people, which is the new infection, or your infection rate, basically. When we created the gating criteria, it was less than 200. It's now over 400, so it's double. The infection rate is double. I believe the percentage positive tests was about the same as it is right now. The community outbreak, as determined, localized, whether or not we had a localized community outbreak was, I think, considered no at the time. That's now a yes, as determined by Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. I think we have to think very, very clearly about why we established the gating criteria to begin with. I recall the meeting very clearly. And I remember before we started, each one of us went around and said, what were the outcomes that we expected? And the outcomes we expected was to have a tool that really showed our commitment to the decision-making process for our teachers, for our students, and for our staff. If this gating criteria is completely abolished and eliminated, we lose that ability. We lose the ability to have an agreed upon board decision, agreed upon method, guidance on what to do next. This decision to close the school all rolls down on the superintendent. In that case, I agree it should be on the health department. But I think we've had a couple comments tonight that said that may or may not happen. I don't know. I think another concern that we really need to think about is having sufficient subs. I think, Ms. Hackney, you said you've had more orientations, but maybe not more applications. Did I hear that accurately? Yeah. And so I also think about what materially has changed. CDC still holds their position that they held when we accepted the gating criteria. They acknowledge that if you have low transmission or low new number of cases in the community, that in school education can occur without an impact. They also caution against the potential for increasing transmission risk when that number is high. You know, right now we're over 400. Last week we were at 677. So numbers are headed in the right direction. To still maintain the ability to have the guidance that we all agreed we needed when we established the gating criteria to begin with. And so I want us to seriously consider, before we take a vote here in a few minutes, that what has really changed? How have the outcomes that we determined were so critical when we created this and accepted this gating criteria, what has materially changed from CDC guidance, from transmission rates within the community, from positivity rates for COVID tests? So I think we have to seriously and earnestly consider what's different. We put a lot of time, energy. I thought we had a very clear set of outcomes that we all agreed at the end of that meeting that this gating criteria accomplished those outcomes that the board was after. I think it's a significant change to completely eliminate guidance to leadership to support the decisions they make.
Doug, if I could just not necessarily answer you, but
Sure.
to kind of understand where you're coming from. I think as I have been contemplating this since our last meeting, one of the considerations for me has been something that's changed to me has been how our community is treating each other. And it seems like this is a very divisive topic. And I've lived here for almost 25 years, and I've always felt like the thing that distinguishes our community from other communities is that we really care about each other and respect each other. And that is not happening. And so originally when I was looking at, the data is all trending downward, and even my husband and I were talking about it. I'm like, I really believe if we just stayed the course with the gating criteria, that our numbers would be low. But it might be a month, it might be 2 months. And I personally do not want to go through this every 2 weeks. I have kids that are doing remote learning. I have a family. I have a job. I work in the community, trying to make the community a better place every day. And what we've been doing is counterproductive to that. And so in some respects, I feel like we just need to rip the Band-Aid off and let her go instead of just waiting. So
I'd like to respond, because I think it's a good place, like Sharon works in the community, her job is to build community, literally, right? And I can see how painful it is for you, so I want to recognize what a good job you do in the community, and you're outside of here. But there are things that have, so from my perspective, like in my real job, there are things that have changed pretty drastically since we created the gating criteria. One, we know so much more about the virus. We know more about mitigation. We've learned so much. Just in the last 2 weeks, the rate for PCR testing was dropped from 45, I believe, to 32, the sensitivity. And so because of that,
Finally.
we are seeing a lower percent positive. So the state of Kansas, KDHE, lowered it. So that's a significant change that is happening too. Our treatments are working. Our treatments are working well, and evidence of that is our hospitalizations are so far down. So even if the community spread is high, our hospitalizations are down, trending downwards, thank God, because our hospital workers have been overwhelmed. But so there are some very significant things that have happened. And one of the things that we talk about data, and I know you like numbers too, but when the physicians at the parent roundtable were talking about what they're seeing in real life view, that they feel like the community transmission is higher because kids are not in school, because it's not as a controlled environment and they're a large part of the community, that really struck me. Because we are seeing more kids that are positive, but they're not anywhere with a mask. They're all hanging out together. So I thought that was really interesting. But my biggest point is that treatments are working, so that's something we've learned. We've evolved in this. Hospitalizations are down. PCR testing has changed. So we have learned things that have significantly changed.
So to push devil's advocacy, if we know that rates are going to come down, why completely eliminate the gating criteria when, if the rates go down basically 1%, what you're saying, the rates could come down more than that, we'd be in anyway,
so
right? And we
that's a fair
eliminate
question.
the ability to provide guidance to leadership. And the second point you made was about CDC. I don't think CDC has backed off of they haven't changed their approach about transmission rates. And something I haven't heard anyone talk about, we talked about students' future. And, what my concern is, my real concern is, that I haven't heard anyone talk about tonight, no one's brought this up, is we talk about this short time frame, 6 months, a year. No one knows the impact of this virus on individuals 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line. We don't know, we can't know, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this big question mark around the potential impact to students' health years down the road. In fact, I read something earlier today that said, they're starting to, as time goes, they're starting to see these potential lags in healing. Even though they would show negative, there's still physical impacts to those people that had the virus.
Hold on.
I'm not going to talk over you. We're at recess for 5 minutes. session. We got everybody?
Are we ready to start? Okay, so just for clarification, I stated the wrong numbers. It's dropped from 42 to 35 in Kansas, not 45 to 32. Someone will call me on that, the threshold for PCR testing. So I need to restate my motion. Mr. President, I motion that we abolish the gating criteria for, and begin school on February 1st, abolish for the rest of the school year. I think
The rest of the 2021 school year?
this school year, make sure that it's abolished for the rest of the school year and begin school on Monday, February 1st.
Yeah, I needed a clarification whether we're talking the end of the rest of the school year or the calendar year.
I think you're just saying
Ceiling
abolish
system.
it, right?
Yeah.
Do you even need to say school year?
Well, that's what I wondered too. Can I just say abolish it then?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. President, I move to abolish the gating criteria and go back to in-person learning on February 1st.
Can you add the,
Second.
And to,
thank
yeah,
you.
and that we give the administration the, authority and we
As presented.
Approve the
approve
administrative
that
recommendation.
what the principals and administrators have put together to help decrease stress in the buildings.
Second.
Move forward with that too.
Moved and seconded to abolish, you want to read me the motion, Candy, so we have it clear?
Oh, Mrs. Sealing has made a motion to abolish the gating criteria of schools to start February 1. Mr. Anderson has seconded it.
Final discussion, final comments. Candy, please collect the vote.
We're going to start the vote with Mr. Winbolt.
I knew it. I knew she would start with me. My vote is in favor of the schools, of the students. I vote yes.
Mr. Updike,
No.
Mrs. Mitchell? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Boyle?
No.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
The vote is 5-2. It is approved.
Thank you. Moving on to our next action item, E-rate bids. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, hey, we still have a lot of business to do up here. So if you're going to leave, we ask you to do it quietly. If you're going to stay, you're more than welcome. So this is E-rate bids, so.
Can we get a 5-minute recess? I know that we've had others.
We're at recess for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you.
fiscal year 2024.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Phil Elliott.
Were you prepared? I'm just kidding.
Yep.
Basically, we presented this last week, our last meeting. I did add the 2 actual contracts. I will sign those. I just need board action. The federal E-rate programs requires board action anytime we approve federal related dollar, and that's what this would be. So I'd stand for any questions. It's a 3-year contract on internet at 2 gig with the option to go to 5 if we need to, and then a firewall to support that speed.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the E-rate contract.
It's moved and seconded for the board to approve the E-rate bid contracts. Any questions? Moved and seconded. We can still have discussion, so.
Is this just kind of end of the line changes and that nothing to do with the actual fiber in the ground, right, or is it?
This particular one is not. If we'd have gone with a different contractor, it would have potentially been a different service. Right now, we actually get our internet service from, used to be Time Warner at Spectrum or Charter Communications, and they actually have fiber right out here in front of the building. And so our main fiber termination is actually in here. Okay. And then we use our own dark fiber to bring it down to our head end at the high school, just because it was so much cheaper at the time.
What are we going to do when we vacate this building?
We'll relocate to a different location. Even if we don't occupy the building anymore, we have a lease on it for several more years, and so it'll cover this particular contract. We actually did have them bid Timber Sage and Woodland Spring just as alternate locations to see what that price was. Just because it was a new build out, it was a little higher. We anticipate that being less of an issue in 3 years when we rebid it, just because there's going to be that much more fiber in the ground, and so we won't be paying to put that fiber in the ground, which is what happens if you designate a new location.
Okay. Thanks.
How far is fiber going? How far does it go to the south right now? Not ours, but in something residential could grab onto. Do you happen to know?
There are several companies actively. If you've been down Webster lately, there are several companies fighting for squatters' rights.
That's what they're doing. Okay, got it.
And so there's a lot that will be available in different locations throughout the district. The biggest thing we need to consider is wherever we bring the fiber in, we need to make sure we've got a generator, because if we lose power, that fiber connected equipment needs to stay up and running. So Woodland Spring, here, the high school are our current 3 generated locations. So those will be what we'll bid next time when we do it.
So, since one of them is here and, we won't be here anymore after the school year.
Right.
Are we gonna transfer that to another location? Or since we still have the lease?
Yeah, we have a lease. We'll stay here
We'll stay here through the lease?
Even if we change the use of the building or the owner does something else leasing the rest of it, we'll maintain that component.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep. On a side note, he has several churches actively salivating over the building, so.
Over this one?
No, it makes perfect sense. There's some upgrades they need to do, but it's not our problem.
Any other questions for Phil? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion items. First, did you need anything else, Phil? Okay, good. Discussion items 7.01, Kansas Association of School Boards Policies Update and Policy GAJ Gifts. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, a couple of things. If the board is okay with this, I'd like to allow the administrators, other than the ones that need to be here, to go offline and and get ready for tomorrow. Policies. As you know, the Kansas Association of School Boards come out with policies either in November either in December or January, and then we bring it to you either in January, February. They'll do it again in June or July, and then we follow up and bring it to you either in July or August. I know you love policies. Sometimes with policies, there's some things that get put in here, and you kind of wonder, boy, somebody was looking for something to do. There's really not any big policies here, but I'm going to go through these very quickly. GAR, the communicable disease, basically it talks about, this is a lot of the changes comes to COVID, and it talks about that public health may be excluded from district-owned or operated property, whereas in the past it said it shall be. It also gives authorization by the employee's physician or local health officer, or after the expiration of period of isolation or quarantine. A lot of this changes is either adding in the local health officer or the superintendent's designee. There's not a great amount of change to this policy. So communicable diseases. I'm going to pause here. Do you have any questions? I know it's fast, but at the same time, this was here at the last board meeting too. So I'm assuming that you've already seen this, you kind of go over it. If I'm wrong, please forgive me.
The only thing that I would bring to attention is that, because at first when I was reading the gifts policy, I thought, well, the last thing I want to do is take away gifts from, I think our teachers need to feel appreciated, but there is that part in there that it's like under $200 or some, I mean, so it isn't that people can't buy teacher appreciation gifts. So I don't want anyone to feel like that at all, because if anything, they need appreciation.
Right. I'll jump to that one in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went right ahead of you.
Communicable diseases, G is employees, JGCC, communicable diseases, remember J is students, so it talks about any student. So these basically correspond. And if you look, almost all the changes that have to do with GAR is pretty much the same as JGCC. Okay. Jumping over to what Mrs. Sealing was bringing up, you're 100% correct. One of the things that Greg was talking about here is gifts is something that we can't have, and we want to make sure that people understand that, as long as it's not at the idea that someone can give you a gift and expect some kind of change based on them giving you a gift, whether it's a grade, whether it's a contract, whether it is or is not. The reason that it starts out the giving gifts between student staff is discouraged. Basically, you don't want there to be an assumption that parents have to get gifts. You have some parents that could afford it. You have some parents that can't. But Mrs. Sealing's right. We're not saying that you can't do that. What we're saying is it's not something that we think that publicly we should be saying, hey, you should go out and get gifts for your teachers. We did ask, in the past it talks about class or school-sponsored activity unless approved by the principal or the employee's director. If you remember, we have some staff members that work in buildings that work in multiple buildings. And so they may spend more time with their specific director than they would be with that principal. Basically, the next paragraph, the gifts to staff members, it basically is talking about you shouldn't expect to get any kind of gift, money, gratuity, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read all that to you. In executing decision-making authority affecting the district influence, it's basically that next paragraph. This policy is not intended to apply to gifts between family members, because, you know, Sharon said you've been here 25 years. You may have somebody that's a teacher in the building, and that teacher in the building may be a family member, and you should still be able to get gifts back and forth. So we're not implying to get rid of that. But probably the biggest part is there shouldn't be kind of any gifts intended so that, you know, people get contracts or things like that. But I think the most important one is that last sentence in red, and it talks about gifts of nominal insignificant value or services offered for a reason unrelated to employee's position, which could not be reasonably expected to influence a decision, may be accepted where the value of the gift is less than $200. So, give you an example, when the board goes to the National School Boards Conference and Greg Goheen takes us out to dinner, okay, he's not spending more than $200 per person. And he's not saying, hey, you guys are gonna keep employing me because you bought dinner. So, whether there's lots of different things where you may get a gift card for $25 or you may get a gift card for $7, you more than have the ability to accept that. The one thing you always have to be careful is to make people understand that just because you're giving me the gift doesn't mean I'm going to give you business, doesn't mean you're going to get anything. I think you're all adults, you all understand what we're talking about there.
It's essentially if it's a bribe,
There you go.
right? Whether it be like the placement on a sports team or, you know, I mean, something,
Right.
or a grade or whatever.
I'm gonna buy something for the
Yeah.
coach and now my kid gets to start.
Right.
The gifts to the schools, KH, this kind of came up because of the previous policy. And one of the things that KH said, and it's one of those things that, when you go in and dig and you change one policy, it changes the other. Any organization or individual making gift to the district shall have the prior approval of the board. I don't think that you guys want to have to approve every time somebody gives us a gift. So it says the board or the superintendent. We're going to change that to superintendent or designee. One thing I want to remind you is sometimes a gift to the district isn't a good gift. And I'll give you an example. Someone was wanting to give us a piano a while back. And while we hear a piano is really nice, if it takes you quite a bit of money to fix that up and get it operational and make it safe, and it's going to cost an excessive amount of money, then maybe that's not a good gift. You understand what I'm saying? So, with that, last but not least, this is the one I think that you all kind of look at and go, But the policy was a change and it talked about gang activity. I don't know that Spring Hill has much of a problem with gang activity. I don't know that we've ever had it. But we did change that. It talks about safety of well-based persons on school-owned grounds or operated property at our school-sponsored activities, programs, or events. You know, we're going to make some common sense. Disciplinary action may be taken against the student for causing whatever it is, and, you know, a gang-related activity. Again, I don't want to downplay it. I don't think we have gang issues. Doesn't mean that someday that we won't. But if you're around in the early 90s, this was kind of a big deal, and it really wasn't so much actual gang activity as what we'd call wannabe gang activity. So with that, we'll stand any questions. If it's real technical, Greg Goheen is still here, and so I asked him if he would hang around in case you guys had any specific questions. I'm seeing heads shake, so I can't move on because that's the board president's job.
My only question was on the gifts policy, but it was answered originally when it says, hold on a second, let me bring it up. Talks about a reasonable person, you know, other than the district, that a reasonable person would understand is intended to influence official action or judgment. I think that's, my question was, what's reasonable, right? What's a reasonable person? But when you, by adding in that less than $200, I think that clarifies that. That's the only question I had. Were there any other questions? I can't hear you, Brad, what? That's a legal term as well. Right. Right. Any other final discussion or questions? Moving on to the second discussion item is district vaccination sites. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, there's some history here, and I wanted to bring it to you to make sure that we at least had a conversation about it. One of the things that the state of Kansas is talking about is moving into phase 2. And in order to move to phase 2, hopefully we will get enough vaccine so that our teachers, our employees people over 65 years old will be able to get vaccinated. For those people who want to get vaccinated, will be able to go get vaccinated. Right now, we're looking at February 4th and 5th, if there's enough vaccine, that our special ed education staff that's been identified, not all the staff, but the ones who are working with high-risk kids would be able to go get vaccinated. The place that they would do, that has been available to them is Olathe West or Blue Valley High School. Part of the reason this is going to be handled by Children's Mercy. There will be no nurses given, shots at that point.
Our nurses.
There's no nurses or school nurses giving vaccination at this point. One thing I do want to say, I don't know as we continue if they'll want to move this far south, but I would like to be able to give them the option of being in our schools. There's a couple of things. We may have some students or staff that it's harder for them to travel further. I did talk to Greg a little bit. There's not the liability on using the site. The liability that you run into is the people given the actual shot. Is that right, Greg? And so if our nurses start getting the shots, then that could be some liability. Now, if we send our nurses somewhere else and they give shots, then that's based upon, like if for some reason Children's Mercy would allow our nurses to give shots and they needed some staff to go out there, and then our nurses gave shots at Olathe West with our staff, if there was an issue, that would fall within the responsibility of Children's Mercy. So what I'm doing is asking, just have a discussion about eventually having the ability to have vaccination on our site. And I know there's some issues with liability, but again, at some point, I'm hoping that students will be able to get vaccinated. We may be a couple of years away. I know that there's some thoughts one way or the other about it, but in my mind, as long as we're not requiring people to go get vaccinated, then I would like to locally be able to make it available. So with that, we can have a discussion. Or you guys can tell me you're not interested, and then we're done.
And by no way meaning that we would start vaccinating students. I mean, obviously, that would be a very consent situation.
We're a long way off from that.
Right.
Yeah, we're probably.
I mean, no one is required at this moment to be vaccinated, so.
Well, they're not
I think
recommending it
anything's
anyway.
even approved for anybody
No.
under 18 right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's an emergency FDA approval right now anyway, so even in the hospital system, they can't require us to have a vaccination yet because of the approval is still pending.
So this is just about offering our facility.
As of right now, it's
as
just
someplace they can set up shop and do the vaccinations for the community.
Here's the way I look at it is when they're starting it up, now our people are going to have to travel up there either during the day or off hours to go get that. And we're going to provide them time to go do it. It'd make it so much easier if they were going to Spring Hill High School than if they were going to Blue Valley High School.
Or even here.
Or even in this building. It doesn't necessarily have to be a school. One of the things that they're wanting to do, Sharon, though, is we I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell, we probably ought to have, the reason they like the bigger schools is you can bring in a big group of people and social distance in a gym. You can take them and give the actual vaccination in another gym. Then you can move the people into the commons area while you wait to see if there's an adverse reaction. So we probably wouldn't use a place like this. You're probably looking at either a high school or a middle school in order to have the gyms and then the space in order to do that.
And is it, do they bring the emergency equipment? They manage all of that none of that falls on us, right?
No,
I mean, there is a 15-minute waiting period following the vaccination for observation, so it would be helpful to be a very big space because you need a separate space from the vaccination area for observation for 15 minutes.
Now, my understanding, like when they go to Olathe West, they will probably start out in one of the auxiliary gyms and or actually the main gym. They'll put them in there. Then they'll move them into an area such as the main gym so that they can actually get the vaccinations. They're hoping to do 12 vaccinations, I don't remember, 120 vaccinations an hour. So, 2 every minute, I believe. So it moves pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would need a bigger space such as the commons area so that they can monitor any adverse reaction. But again, my understanding is there's no responsibility put on the school. All the responsibility falls on Children's Mercy. And they're also...
Well, liability.
I'm sorry. liability.
Risk,
Anybody
risk
can,
and liability lies with
Sorry,
Children's
yeah,
Mercy
verbiage.
and not with the district, right? Okay.
right, I made a
I think
verbiage
it's certainly
mistake.
worth pursuing, it's a community service, really, is what it is, and if we're not elevating our risk or liability,
We haven't
I
ever
don't
done
see a
this
downside.
before.
What?
We haven't even given flu shots in our building. I really struggle with starting to give out vaccinations.
We haven't given flu shots,
We have?
yeah, and are for about 11 years now. Not for students, but we've given it
The staff.
to the staff.
Okay, well, it's a discussion item, it's not an action item.
I mean, it'll come back as an action item if they ever want to ask us to do our own facility, so.
What's your concern, Nels, about?
I just think there's a lot of problems with it, and it's experimental vaccine that we're gonna start giving out in our schools. I think that's a problem. It's approved on an emergency basis, and it went through like 6 months of testing when they normally take 3 years. What could
I hear what
possibly go
you're
wrong?
saying. I hear what you're saying, but I also believe in lots of situations that people have choice, and so it's not mandated, it's not being forced. They would consent to it. But
I guess my thought is, if they're going to get it anyway, then why force them to go so much further to get it? Especially when we get to the point where the 65 and older, the people in our community would not have to travel as far. Again, I don't know if they're gonna wanna come down here for a while, but, you know, we may be talking next year sometime, but at least I wanna have a discussion about it.
Well, and we would have more discussion when it came back as an action.
Yep, that'd be correct.
Any other comments, questions? Moving on to items from Board of Education members for future meetings. Any additions or follow-up on these?
Where are we, I've got well, this is the place to talk about it, but, where's the retreats next February 6th?
February 6th, it's at DLR. If you guys look on superintentions, down on the left side at the bottom, it's going to be at DLR from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Is that where we were last year?
Question was, do they have a bigger room? Because I really don't know if I can be productive wearing a mask for 8 hours.
We've asked them to prepare the space so that we could effectively socially distance to not.
We can either pull those tables back in the main room, or we can go downstairs.
We have 2 spaces that we can potentially use.
Thank you.
We'll go and measure it now. I'm sorry, I answered your question before you asked.
That sounds like.
They do have a big space in the basement. You've been there. And so we can go down there and move a bigger area.
Great. That will help.
Any items to add to this list for future meetings?
Just looking forward to the board retreat to see if we can add some new stuff.
Yeah, since we're talking about the board retreat, we'll probably, like we normally do, we'll start at 9. We'll have some bagels and some other things for you. And then we'll bring lunch in. The one thing that we talked about, we won't do supper this time because we'd kind of like to have a big dinner where our spouses can come in and we could, if we're going to spend that kind of money, I'd rather be able to go to a nice place. And to be honest, we don't spend the money. DLR usually donates that. The DLR did ask that if we did it to wait, so that they could go with us and have kind of a bigger, nicer outing than just down in the basement.
Okay, we do need an executive session.
Well, I mean, I
20.
made my first motion tonight, I guess I could make the second.
I can do it.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind, I'll have to wait. I second then.
Mr. President, I move that the board recess into executive session for the personal purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of the identifiable individual under coma. Those to be in session include the Board of Education, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Director of Human Resources, and other administrators as requested. The executive session to begin at 10:05 and return in this place no later than 10:30.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Candy, please collect a vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes,
Approved 7-0.
thank you.
Oh, down there.
All the way down?
Oh, where we did last time.
Usually steal mine, I'll take it to fridge, but whoever wants it for lunch.
They're leaving it right now.
Okay, we're back in session.
Mr. President, I move that we approve Mika Bauer as principal of Timber Sage Elementary School.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Mickey Bauer as new principal at the Timber Sage Elementary School. Any final questions or comments? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved, 7-0.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Move and second to
Long,
adjourn. All in
long day,
favor?
Phil.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank